Hi guys, it's Pete aka On A Retro Tip, and I'm back with another selection of unreleased games, and this time it's a console with which I've had very little contact in all honesty, the Atari Jaguar, or Jaguar if you're in North America. The Jaguar was marketed as the world's first 64-bit console, but it was 64-bit in the same way that the PC Engine or TurboGrafx was 16-bit, as Atari cheekily combined the power of the Jaguar's two 32-bit chips, Tom and Jerry, to make that claim. It was released in late 1993 in the US and the following year in Europe and Japan, and was discontinued in 96 after being a commercial flop. The complex architecture of the console meant that few developers were willing to make games for the console. This, combined with the surprising lack of in-house development, led to the console's library being extremely small at around 50 official games. The 95 ad on the Jaguar CD saw even less commercial success and had a mere 13 games. Despite the tiny library, the Jaguar has an incredibly long list of cancelled games. Join me as I take a look at 10 of them. Theorem Fighters was in development from High Voltage Software for the Jaguar and possibly Jaguar CD, with a planned 1995 release. A 2D fighter, it's an obvious Mortal Kombat clone using digitised sprites. The similarities between the two games weren't just superficial though. Theorem Fighters has a plot that was almost identical to that of Mortal Kombat 2 and used many of the same martial artist actors from the Mortal Kombat franchise, including Ho Sung Pak, who played Liu Kang and Shang Tsung, Daniel Pesina, who played Johnny Cage, and Catalin Zamiar, who played Kitana, Melina and Jade. The game was to have a decent roster of 25 characters, each having 4 unique special moves and 2 finishing moves, and features over 30 stages across 4 game modes. It was first revealed at CES in January 95 and also appeared at E3 that year, but both times in a pretty basic state and featuring only 4 characters. Several ROMs of the game are known to exist, and the demo version shown at 95 CES has been found and released online, which is the version you're seeing on screen. Although quite primitive, containing only a few characters and stages, it gives an overall feel of how the game would have played. The similarities to Mortal Kombat are clear, but the hit detection isn't quite there, and some of the motion seems a bit floaty. Theorem Fighters was reportedly 90% complete when Atari cancelled it in January of 1996. The Jaguar was to have a Tiny Toon Adventures game which was scheduled for release in 94-95. It was to feature several playable Tiny Toons characters including Buster and Babs, but the beta demo has you play as Plucky in a level called Hollywood Hijinks based on an episode called Hollywood Plucky. It was cancelled in 1996 when Atari discontinued the console, but rumours were knocking about that the game was entirely finished. I find that hard to believe as the demo certainly doesn't reflect this. The demo's great if you like walking in a straight line, as that's pretty much all you can do. Although to be fair, it does look pretty good graphically and has a nice almost Super Nintendo-like cartoony style. The demo was released in 2010 for a limited time on BetaPhaseGames.com as part of a Jaguar beta preservation pack. I don't have much footage of DactylJoust, only a 10-second clip, but it was in development for the Jaguar due for a November 95 release. As is hinted in the name, you're essentially jousting on pterodactyls. Gameplay was seemingly playable, but the game was far from finished. It does look intriguing though, despite the lack of info, and looks great visually. This game is for some reason known by a few names: Switch Death, Deathmatch, and the correct name Deathwatch. A 2D action platformer, it seems to play like a platforming run and gun. According to the developer Data Design Interactive, Deathwatch was cancelled by Atari sometime during development because they wanted to focus on 3D games. What a shame, as despite the terrible quality of this 95 E3 footage, you can see that the game's 2D backgrounds and sprites are absolutely stunning. Sadly, the devs no longer have the game's code, so it seems unlikely that Deathwatch will ever surface. Jack Nicklaus Cyber Golf, aka Jack Nicklaus Power Challenge Golf, was being developed by Atari and handmade software for the Jaguar CD in '94. I'm not sure why or when it was cancelled, but the only demo known to exist is pretty bare bones, lacking animations and voices. Marketed as a photorealistic golf game, Jack Nicklaus Cyber Golf was far from it, but I guess that's what passed for photorealism in the early to mid 90s. It uses a reported 9,000 images of Muirfield Village Golf Course, which is the first course created by Nicklaus. Phase Zero was a planned first-person shooter for the Jaguar being developed by HyperImage. Gameplay wise, I think it's somewhat reminiscent of Magic Carpet. A playable demo appeared online which shows that Phase Zero looks decent enough and plays very well. Nobody seemed sure on the details, but something went awry during its development and it was cancelled. HyperImage say that they do have the source code lying around somewhere, so who knows if a complete game will surface in the future. Let's hope so, as Phase Zero looks like jolly good fun. Gotcha was the fourth Atari arcade game released in 1973. A two-player maze game, it's essentially a game of cat and mouse with one player pursuing the other. Although it wasn't a hit commercially, there were plans to port Gotcha to the Jaguar, but nothing at all was known about the port until one of the developers posted a comment on Facebook in 2016. From the post we can see that the game was close to release and a ROM does exist somewhere, so we may see a homebrew release in the future. Despite the only footage available being rather poor quality videos from '95 CES, Conan is definitely the most exciting game on this list for me. In development from French studio Arcade Zone, Conan was to be a side-scrolling beat-em-up in the same vein as Golden Axe or Knights of the Round. Arcade Zone, who had developed a couple of Super Nintendo games, met some Atari staff at one of the Consumer Electronics shows and decided to have a crack at developing for the Jaguar. They developed an engine which utilised the Jaguar's GPU and its ability to handle huge sprites on screen. They began work on a beat-em-up based around the character of Conan, but this was more of a proof of concept to demonstrate the engine, as no Conan licence had been secured. When their publisher pulled out of releasing their current project Nightmare Busters on the SNES, Arcade Zone disappeared along with Conan, and sadly they didn't even get to finish the first level. A huge loss for the Jaguar's library, as Conan looks absolutely fantastic. Black Ice White Noise, also known as Chaos Agenda, was an open world action adventure game being developed by Kelp Entertainment, due to be published by Atari on the Jaguar CD in late '95. The game's set in a cyberpunk dystopian San Francisco 40 years in the future. The player would be able to control 3 separate characters, much like in GTA 5, a feature quite ahead of its time in the mid-90s. According to an interview with one of the game's designers, the 3 characters were a stylish hacker, an attractive female street samurai, and a rugged-looking alcoholic burnout. The open world aspect would have also mirrored Grand Theft Auto and was to include FMV cutscenes. The ability to hack computers and vehicles played a large part in the gameplay, using mechanics similar to that in System Shock. 23 builds of Black Ice White Noise are known to exist, and 2 prototypes emerged for people to play on their Jaguar CD, although they're unstable builds, and the soundtrack was also made available commercially as it was never used in the game. Atari reduced the team working on the game and pushed back the release date, but as they fell deeper into financial trouble, the game was cancelled altogether. Charles Barkley Basketball was a planned port of the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo game Barkley Shut Up and Jam, being developed by Ringler Studios. Its namesake is the popular NBA player who at the time played for the Suns, wearing this iconic number 34 jersey, which was the first jersey I ever bought as it happens. Despite being reportedly almost complete and being previewed in magazines, the game never saw release. A playable prototype did emerge on a Jaguar site and was bought by B&C Computer Visions, who produced reproduction carts. Although playable, the game struggles in 2-player mode and has minimal sound effects and absolutely no music, so the game clearly wasn't finished. So those were 10 of the many cancelled Atari Jaguar games. Are you a fan of the console in general? And if so, let me know in the comments which of these games you would have liked to play. I'll see you on the next cancelled games video, and as always, thanks for watching. You can click this playlist here to check out some of my other cancelled games videos.